Okay, everybody's going to disagree with me, so I'm going to be brave and say it anyways. But don't we want kids to go to a place where they feel welcome and can thrive and staff are ready and have skills
I like that
to
you think we're
help
going to
them?
disagree with that.
Welcome to Spedsplaining, where special education gets decoded one case at a time. I'm Stefan, a former classroom teacher and current instructional coach, and I'm joined by three brilliant minds in special education, Darcy, Anna, and Leanne. Each week, they take real stories, often from right here in Washington, and break them down into plain language. We use these stories as a launch pad to explore the wild, wonderful, and sometimes frustrating world of general and special education. Whether you're an educator, parent, advocate, or just curious about how the system really works, we've got you. Let's dive in. All right, Anna, whenever you're ready, don't screw it up.
So helpful. Thank you. Okay, I actually am going to do something a little bit different today. I am going to review a class action lawsuit that's currently going.
Oh, so we don't know the answer yet?
We don't know the answer. So my intention around doing this is a little bit more around what could this mean for us in Washington, and kind of also like where do you guys foresee this maybe going in terms of special education? So which you guys might have heard of this because it's in Oregon. So in 2019, a class action lawsuit was filed against the Oregon Department of Ed, the Oregon governor, and other state officials. It was brought by COPA, which is the Council of Parent Attorneys and Advocates, a disability rights organization, the National Center for Youth Law, and then a mental health law firm and a private law firm. So that whole group got together and represented 4 students, and then COPA, which was representing a class of similarly affected students. The lawsuit alleged that the Oregon public school system shortened the day for hundreds of students, and claiming that the Department of Ed is failing to fulfill its federal obligations to provide FAPE in the LRE and provide equal educational opportunities in integrated settings. So I know we've talked like quite a bit about shortened days before. Maybe Stefan, do you want to see if you can explain the significance around kind of that conversation and the impact that it might have? And then if you're floundering, Darcy and Leanne can jump in.
All right, get your life vests on, Darcy and Leanne. Someone's about to be drowning. I'd also like to point out that Anna's like, I want to go first. And then the first words out of her mouth, like, I'm going to do something a little bit different. So like starting off the morning by just throwing everybody a curveball, appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, she called you out, though, right, Stefan? Like, come on, answer the question.
Yeah, just aggressive. So the question is, what are the implications of a shortened workday for a student, a shortened school day for a student on an IEP?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for any student, not just a student on an IEP, but what are...
There are a legally required amount of minutes that students have to either receive services or go to school. And if you shorten the workday or school day,
Stefan just wants to work half days. Is all
I think there is a Freudian slip happening.
If you shorten it's a work day for someone out there, hopefully everyone. But if you shorten the school day, then students don't have access to those minutes, right?
Yes, good job. And I think there's an equity issue too. It tends to be our kids who potentially need the most service that end up on shortened days, and the impact that has on their families and their ability to maintain livelihood and households and things like that, I think also are a secondary impact.
Which may be interpreted as discrimination.
So that's essentially it. Like if you shorten the school day for whatever reason, then there's especially at those early levels, there's a certain required amount of minutes for gen ed students to be in school. And then don't students on IEPs have an like outlined number of service hours? like we always, every single one of these cases ends in comp ed, a certain amount of hours of comp ed. And so that, man, I want you to speculate in what this could mean for, it means they're going to get a bunch of comp ed. That's where this is going to end up. We don't know it yet, but they're going to be like, if they're cutting their school day off, then like they've got to make up those hours somewhere.
So compliance-wise, if a student's on a shortened day, you amend an IEP, decrease the minutes that they're receiving services. So you can be legally compliant while still being on a shortened day.
Okay.
I think Stefan's like,
and this is an interesting.
You're undermining the entire point I thought I had made with facts and evidence.
Well, that is true, because you do have to amend the IEP, which sometimes that is missed.
An interesting piece to know is that the state says, and I believe Washington's 1080, that's the minimum requirement of hours, but each district actually decides the minutes for their school. So we have some that are 1480, we have some that are 16 something, right? And so each district really decides what a student day looks like, and the state is a minimum bar.
It's like baseball fields. They're all different dimensions, right? Like you got the outfield, all these fence and all these different things, or soccer fields all the same way. I guess I didn't know that. I just figured everybody, man, do you think students know that? How long until some...
Yes, students know that. Well, that's a made up student day. We're going to decide the bell rings at 9 because that's a nice number that everybody can remember. But if you go to the district up the hill, you don't have to go on Friday.
There you go. Well, I'm thinking like the students.
Of course, they know that
in like a 1480, and they're looking down the to the next district, and those kids are only at a 1080. Like, how come we're going to school for 400 minutes longer, or whatever it is, 400 hours, or is that 1080, 1080 hours? How long is that?
Yes.
Okay.
And
yeah, minutes would make sense. That was decades. Okay.
So I think, kind of beyond compliance piece, it also, you're looking at depriving them of academic time, like Darcy said, right? Like these are often the kids that have the most need, losing out time with peers, like all of those opportunities and things like that. So there's kind of two big sides to a partial day argument. One, from the school side, if it's due to behavior, because they're protecting the safety of staff and students. On the opposing side is the idea of partial day is that they're separating students from their peers, which not only in terms of the classroom that they're in, but even their ability to be at school. So this class action lawsuit claimed that the shortened days are unlawful based on 3 federal statutes. So IDEA Title II of ADA and then Section 504, that it isn't an appropriate behavior management tool. Their data was showing that that students are losing years of education across the state because of being partial day. They cited some absenteeism data and research, and that students who miss 2 days of school per month, like the total hours, are missing out on 1.5 years of instruction by the end of 12th grade. So in that conversation, partial day may sometimes be appropriate, but the intention of it is that it should be temporary with plans to change it. So this case has been pretty big in Oregon because they didn't sue individual districts. These 4 students never sued individual districts. They went straight to the State Department of Ed. So what I've been reading is that this is setting a bit of a precedent because it's showing that this issue is so widespread, and they're arguing that it's systemic, that they need to start at the top. So rather than playing like whack-a-mole and going after individual districts, so just immediately going after the state to change the systems.
So we just had a few years ago, post-COVID, and I don't know if it was technically a class lawsuit, but it was against Chris Reichtel and OSPI.
Oh, I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
What was the only one?
It was about lost instruction time for kids transitioning to work during COVID. And no, it wasn't. That's not true. It was the age out.
Mm-hmm.
So we used to be able to
22.
Yeah, kids used to be done at 21 and now they're done at 22. Cut that whole wrong part.
Oh, the cold open.
I just remember like it was transition. It was the older kids.
Yeah. So in what the initial part of the class action lawsuit is saying is that, like, as a system across the state, we should be supporting supplementary aids and services, and like it should be your state direction to try other things before partial days. So which at the time in Oregon, there was not any of that in terms of what the families are requesting. So I did kind of a deep dive on what a class action lawsuit means, and you have to have two things. You have to prove, which maybe you guys know this. I didn't know this, so I learned something.
I don't know.
You know who definitely doesn't know it?
So in a class action lawsuit, you have to prove numerosity, meaning that there are too many victims to name in one lawsuit. And then commonality, meaning that all the victims are sharing the same legal issue. So initially, again, this is in 2019, the state initially argues that by definition with an IEP, every kid has individual issues. So all these plaintiffs have their own circumstances, therefore there's no commonality. And then alongside that, they were saying there's no numerosity because there's no official state data indicating that partial day is a problem because there's no state data of how many students are on partial day.
Well, now that's a fun little loophole. You can't prove we're doing anything wrong because we're not tracking data on it. So like,
and that is like, I mean, originally when you said that all these attorneys got together, I'm like, oh, this is like we're missing what's important here. Like that's not anything about the kids. We're just saying, well, whatever. We're just dismissing you because we don't want to deal with this right now. Like, and where is there written, this is exactly the time a student will get?
Yeah, because in the federal law, it defines FAPE and LRE, but your state is the one that's defining what those minutes are. And this lawsuit is saying, cool, and state, you're not doing a good enough job.
Mm-hmm.
So
however, we all know that there are shortened days potentially used in a negative and have negative consequences on kids. And it is something that we should probably have some guidance around at the state level.
Oh, we have guidance.
Loose, yeah. I don't know that there's like a exact whack or something that says this is how you shorten a student's day and this is what has to be. So
I don't think that's anywhere. It's not an IDA.
Well,
yeah,
other than LRE, right?
That's kind of where I'm wondering if this is going to go. So in 2021, the federal court grants the class certification, which allows this lawsuit to proceed into courts, saying that, like, so all of those lawyers that I listed, COPA and the 4 plaintiffs and all of those other lawsuits, are now in 2021 in the court saying, like, we are representing every student in the state that's on a shortened day. The court says, so there's a ruling saying that the glue that holds the class together isn't a diagnosis. It's the state's inability to monitor the local school district. So commonality is applicable here. And the lack of data and the state's inability to monitor that is part of the problem. So the court looks at the reports of parent advocacy groups when they're making their decision and complaints and those types of things. And just from one parent advocacy group that they talked with, which wasn't one of the plaintiffs, they found that over 70 complaints within one school year were about partial day placements. So they were saying, state, you may not have the data, but other people do, that this is a problem. So the court ruled that numerosity and commonality applied, so the case moved forward. So usually in a big lawsuit, my understanding is everyone kind of has their own experts, and then like a judge is kind of deciding, like, yeah, I kind of agree with this expert, right? Here, both parties agreed on having a neutral expert. Have you guys ever heard of that happening?
No,
What
but I
is a
like it.
neutral expert that they both agreed on the same person?
Yeah, so they had a neutral expert come in from out of state, and they did essentially a pretty deep dive into the state's monitoring system, their data systems, their laws, and then all of the things that the parents and everything brought and advocacy groups brought forward.
So
what
an
do you think
impartial
happened?
review.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think happened from there?
I'm guessing that they found there is data because you can pull if they were noting that the students weren't a full FTE.
So yeah, state lost out pretty big time. There were two key reports, one looking at the very specific reports of these plaintiffs, of those 4 specific students, and then one looking at the overall reporting processes in the state. What they found across the state is that the shortened days were not being used as temporary bridges back to full day, that they essentially became the new normal, which sounds very familiar to me in my line of work. What, Stefan?
I just think that could be a problem. That makes perfect sense, right? Isn't the whole point of like we're reducing instructional hours or even suspension is like it should be like time back, like a bridge back to full integration, right? And so we can rag on Oregon a little bit. That's easy. This is a specific to Oregon problem. Yeah. There's definitely also at least one person in Oregon who listens to us. So this is targeted at you.
Actually, my friend might, because I was kind of thinking about, I'm going to say her name, so bleep this out. But I have a friend in Oregon who's very much struggled with her student, struggling to find a good placement for her own daughter. And because like they've tried private schools, they've tried therapeutic schools, they've tried public school, and like consistently, no matter what, her daughter has been put on partial day with what family feels is very little support.
All right. Well, that's a bummer because I like her a lot. So this is not targeted at her specifically. But like that makes perfect sense, right? You can see a school going, oh, this student is challenging, right? This has challenging, whether it's behaviors or academic needs or whatever is justifying putting on a partial day. That's a relief. Right? We were just kind of talking about this before we started recording when it comes to like MTSS and tier 1 services. I think we have a tendency to be pretty trigger happy with like this kid needs services externally, like outside of my classroom, when research and best practice shows that it should be taking place in. So like if they're finding from that neutral review is like, oh yeah, this is just a band-aid that's becoming a permanent situation, that's a big ruh-roh.
They also named that kind of like the more rural districts were lacking the expertise in handling complex behaviors and not having access to systems. This is sounding familiar to anybody considering where we live. They also noted in their report that there is a significant lack of sanctions in the state of Oregon, meaning that the state was not monitoring compliance up to the standards that the federal government says we should. So they weren't monitoring compliance or really telling districts what to do. So they're naming kind of an implementation gap, saying that like you have laws and rules, but then you have no way of enforcing your districts in following them. What does Washington do? Like, how do we non-compliance? What does that look like if you're found non-compliant?
I mean, we're doing a lot of monitoring and compliance work right now, and none of it is around the length of a student's day, which makes sense that would be something that we might monitor. That would be a systems issue throughout our state. Some of the things we monitor feel less important than that one would, but we don't have anything catching this.
What kind of systems are in place for accountability in Washington? Like if you're out of compliance,
like in anything, not just partial day stuff, and you're asking?
Yeah. Yes, so that is what I'm asking.
We have 17 indicators in special ed, and they're evaluated at least every other year for districts based on their data and reports submitted. And yeah, as Leanne said, nothing specific to a shortened day.
I do think something, though, that we, I guess I'm looking at the indicators because I have them right here.
Oh, she has the indicators on her wall?
Well,
You're so cool.
It's the thing that you made it. I just put it up here. But I think something, so maybe this isn't on, well, we look at suspension and expulsion.
We look at disproportionality if we're over, yes, but not
and
length of
I
day.
also think like another thing that is looked at a lot, and again, maybe it's not a compliance indicator, but like how your documentation, prior written notice, like to qualify for safety net, proving the hours, improving the services that you're saying, and those types of things. I mean, we may not monitor partial day specifically, but we monitor following team discussion a little bit around it.
I'm not sure about that. I don't think there's any way. There's like if you have a Washington integrated system monitoring situation, yes, they're looking at individual IEPs. But otherwise, when does OSPI look at a prior written notice?
Yeah, that's true.
Never.
Yeah, these issues usually come up in due process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
maybe
compliance isn't even part of safety net anymore, right? Because that's about serving the student and getting funding to the district. So there's, unless you're having an on-site or desk review, or you end up with a corrective action plan and an ESD goes out and looks at some of your stuff, there's really nothing individually that I would be able to tell you in this district, this many students are on a partial day. Now, in our reports, and we recommend every month that special ed directors run the partial day report.
Mm-hmm. See, maybe that's why I'm getting confused, because you work with directors on it all the time. So I'm hearing you do it, and I'm wondering if I assumed it came from the state, and really it's just coming from Darcy.
I think it's something definitely to be aware of, but I don't think there's a capture for it at the state level. So in that sense, I feel for Oregon, because I don't know how they'd get that information without pulling. You would have to go into the details of an IEP and go, is it shortened, or run their partial. If they're funded, if Oregon's funded by FTE, then they could probably pull and go, okay, who's not your 1.0 FTE students, which is how we get the report.
So in the middle of this lawsuit, so now it's in the court, right? Like they're saying, yes, you get to go forward to court. So that's in 2021. In 2022, the state legislation passed Senate Bill 819, which said that shortened days should be infrequent and used for a limited time. It included additional data reporting and procedural requirements on school districts, and stated that parents must receive specific notice and have the right to oppose, and consent can be revoked at any time for partial day placement.
Oh, how convenient.
Did that pass? And that
passed? It did pass in 2022 in Oregon.
I don't know that any of that is new to the IEP process, other than parents can say no. Like, how do you revoke? Like, I'm just disagreeing with the IEP team. You can no longer do this. I'm giving you 2 weeks to figure it out. This is a terrible idea, by the way.
What? Tell me why you think it's a terrible idea.
Everybody's going to disagree with me, so I'm going to be brave and say it anyways. But don't we want kids to go to a place where they feel welcome and can thrive, and staff are ready and have skills to help them? I like that you think we're going to disagree with that.
Yeah, that was the most political phrasing ever. Everyone's going to disagree with me. We want kids to be welcome at school.
Well, think of what that does.
Yeah, everyone's already said from the school side that you shouldn't be here. Family
I
saying
can't, or
too
I don't
damn
know,
bad.
or
Yeah,
right. Or okay, the school says, well, what's the alternative? Okay, we can't serve your kid. Let's check out Utah.
yeah.
Well, I just Googled
it's
this.
not a way of bringing people together to make good decisions for kids and train up staff that we don't have the skills to work with everybody. Schools aren't supposed to do everything.
Liam, don't share what Google says. I'm still going. We're not done.
Well, okay.
Don't say what Google says.
I won't.
We're
I
only
won't give
halfway
anything
through.
away. I'm just saying we are only halfway through. Okay.
Well, no, we're almost done.
I think that if it's happening in Oregon, we might as well be ready for it in Washington. And what would you like that to look like, Darcy? Because probably this bill in Oregon also has procedures for. I would hope that they thought about there are students that will need a partial day, but as long as you have a plan to increase, that would be okay. That's what we currently do. Here.
It was also ruled there must be regular meetings if you're on a partial day, so at least one every grading period. There's there's going to be a data monitoring system, and that there will be penalties from the state for noncompliance. I didn't look fully into what those penalties.
They're going to take a birthday away.
Hey, I wasn't the one that suggested that. I'm still throwing the party. So in this passing, the state has said, like, look, we fixed it. We passed the law. We are mandating and monitoring and giving sanctions for noncompliance. So are providing opportunity for students with disabilities to have equal educational access. So state saying, we fixed the problem. And then in 2024, February of 2024, the judge dismisses the case and says, yep, we agree, you have fixed the problem. But it didn't stop there, obviously.
That's because it didn't fix the problem.
So the plaintiffs appealed, essentially saying, like, we don't trust you to enforce this unless there's federal oversight. So then in July of 2025, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals reverses the dismissal of the class action lawsuit. They said essentially that, like, yes, the law is permanent, but the enforcement of it is not. And the changes that have been made since the passing of the Senate Bill 819 are administrative. So like hiring a compliance officer, those types of things. But with any administrative decisions, that can change as soon as administration changes. So like governor changes, they could just fire that compliance officer, right? So where it's at right now is it's actually, my research is from January 2026, so I'm a little bit behind. But where it's at right now, the case is returning to the district court.
February 4th.
I'm like, you are really behind, Anna. Come on.
They could have met yesterday. I don't know.
The law moves slow.
I know. This started in 2019, and we're in 2026, and it's still going.
Right.
So they're returning to the district court for consideration. So it was noted by the Ninth Circuit that the court erred by finding that the Senate Bill 819 fully addressed the alleged harm related to lack of data collection and the failure to monitor compliance. It also claimed that more discovery is needed because the data collection, since the bill passed in 2022, the lawsuit was filed in 2019, right? So the data is coming from pre-Senate Bill 819. So the Ninth Circuit is saying, you've passed this, you're saying it's fixed it, but we don't have any data or we don't have any evidence to show that it actually is fixed. So there's no current state data in the court record about the use of shortened days and what that compliance monitoring looks like. So now both sides are re-looking at data since this has passed. So the 23-24 school year, 24-25, and then now 25-26 to see how things have changed. So to Leanne's point, I'm wondering, this is in our circuit of court. There are neighbors. What is that? Mm-hmm. Where could that go for us? What do you guys see kind of happening coming out of this if the end game for the plaintiffs is an injunction saying that this isn't all going to fall apart when the lawsuit's done. we want the accountability to stick. So if they get that, what do you think happens for us?
Based on just the law conferences that we go to every year, the shortened days are a pretty hot topic there. There are a lot of attorneys that are on this. I do think we need a better fix in Washington. I think we need to have a system that monitors this, the use of this, and that we are. I mean, it is a big picture problem. We used to deny access to children back in the day if they had too complicated of physical disability needs, and now it's more behavioral disability needs. They're having parents come pick kids up all the time, not reporting that. They're having shortened days that maybe they didn't even change the FT in the system. Like the reporting is going to have a lot of errors in it, and there is no mechanism for oversight here. So it's coming to us. Whatever Oregon does, we will be similarly aligned. I'm surprised the lawsuit didn't include multiple states, but I don't know. Class action can do that.
I don't know either.
I think following Oregon's lead is a bad idea. Those losers can't even win a national championship in football. So, like, do they have any sort
They've
of
been doing
credibility?
MTSS though for years, and we haven't. So there are things that Oregon does have in place that I'm like, let's get going.
What I keep thinking about what Darcy said about that. For the record, that's a bad idea. And I was like, oh, yeah, I agree with Darcy, I guess. I don't know why. Like, what would a good idea for that type of implementation look like in Washington?
Yeah, I really believe that our state would do better. I think having a bill is to collect data, potentially a great idea. I mean, and I would tell you that we have a bill to collect data on restraint and isolation, and there's no one that would say, this is great data. Some report it, some don't, some report this. And we have tons of guidance about how to report and what to do. And we have guidance around don't tase the kid and potentially end up with a taser in the school. I mean, like just writing something down, great, let's be legal. And the reality of it is if we want to change a system, like let's do better. And I think our OSPI would. I think that they would think about what is needed to keep that kid in school. Why are they on a partial day? I mean, you're talking about potentially high turnover, staff training, like what is missing that is making that not work. And if it's not working, then let's do the right thing by the kid and put them someplace where those skills are available. I agree with Leanne. We see it coming. So let's be in front of it and do better.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. This is how Washington does it. And this is the support we have. I think we've gotten so lean in regards to the depth of our staff right now and the amount of kids that they deal with that potentially stretch their skills thin, that we need to think about things a little bit differently and put the piece of paper down if you want. That doesn't make it clean data. It doesn't mean that the districts are going to do it, and it doesn't mean individual IEP teams are going to make those decisions. And they need the resources to know what their options are.
Well, this is something like as the BCBA, I love data, right? Like we take it all the time. I currently am very immersed in data, and data doesn't do anything unless you're analyzing it and making changes because of it. And so having the data is a little meaningless to me if we're not going to work on the prevention side. So what is it? How can we help schools prevent the need or for what they feel is a need to even put a kid on partial day? There's always those medical exceptions, right? Like that. Those aren't even in this conversation. But when you're talking about behavior, what does that staff training look like? How are we supporting our rural districts? How are we staffing? How are we supporting families and getting that consistency? You know, just some of those types of things. It feels, I agree in that it feels like it's missing the mark to say after the fact, how are we going to monitor you doing it and slap your hand when you're not doing it right, rather than how can we support you in not needing it in the first place?
I also think that IEP teams would benefit from having a very clear, these are the steps for shortening a day, and these are the steps for outlining your plan to increase. I know that we provide that a lot, Darcy. I know that it exists out there. It's not part of our record keeping system or anything where I could say that districts are implementing that across the board, but I think that it helps us a little bit too to know that this is a lawsuit hot topic, and that we want to be following that guidance to keep us on track, to know that we are following the right steps when we have to do a decrease in a day for safety reasons, and that we are making sure that we have those regular meetings to check on progress and use that data effectively to get the student back to a full education, because that needs to always be the goal. And sometimes because of lack of resources, it's not.
And here's going to be my other thing that I have to say about that bill, because you called this out, Anna. They have to meet at least once during a grading period.
That's not
Come
enough,
on. That is not
once
enough.
every 2 months.
If you actually have a plan and you're reviewing data and you're adjusting, doesn't pass the muster bill.
Yeah, on the same end, though, a class action lawsuit isn't going to be satisfied by us saying that we're going to have better intentions as districts. Like, they're going to want some kind of piece of paper showing that there's an enforcement mechanism, right? Like, something will have to happen legally, policy, procedure-wise, if they win.
Well, and
we'd know if Anna stayed up to date on her.
Really, Anna,
They might have already won yesterday.
I'm interested to see too what happens this technically Senate Bill 819 was passed separately, right? It didn't come out of this lawsuit. It's a whole that was a whole separate issue. And so I am interested to see if anything changes to that, or like what they're doing with that, even if this class action lawsuit doesn't, like if the state wins, do they make any changes to the bill or like continue to update it? Because I would think like we said, the law is slow, but it's expensive to be fighting a lawsuit for now going on 7 years. So I'm interested to see if they try to make any like preemptive changes in the future. And in general, I would think that this is, whether or not you had those reporting systems, this is a topic of mind for special education everywhere.
I do wonder if any states have something because I read that they are looking at Washington with this one and several other states that don't have something in place that limits the use of a partial day. And so I'm curious about the states that maybe do have something in place. Did you read anything about that?
No, that's what I should have been doing at 1 a.m. though. That would have been a way more productive use of my time. Any final thoughts, Stefan?
It's not the first time this has come up. It's the importance of tracking data, right? And this has me thinking about some work I'm doing with the district around standards and common assessments, and work that we're trying to do with other districts around that. And recently, one of the teachers said, "Oh, this will be really good to have to bring to our RTI team." And I was like, "Tell me more about that." She said, "We try to refer kids to intervention, and then they say, well, we don't have any data." And then we're like, "Well, what data do you want?" They say, "Well, just bring us data." And I don't know. I don't work in that district, and so I don't know what the actual dynamic there is. But it had me thinking like a lot about this. Like, how do you make decisions? How do we currently make decisions without data? It's all gut feeling, right? And that's not good for anybody. It's not how you make meaningful, lasting change. It's all work in PLCs, right? Like, you should have data-driven decision-making in PLCs where you're looking at data from common assessments around kids who make informed instructional decisions. And I think that all just flows. I think that the challenge there is, and maybe it's more in the lifeblood of special education. I have yet to work with a system where like consistent data monitoring is just the norm. Even my former teaching PLC, people I worked with just the other day said like we had a really tight PLC. That's what they'd say all the time. A really strongly aligned, really good, really strong PLC. And always in the back of my head, I'm going, we didn't look at data one time. We had a really strongly aligned scope and sequence planning group, as opposed to actually talking about student achievement, progress and growth, intervention, differentiation, those types of things, all based off of data. And so I think data collection and decision-making is just not in the culture of a lot of like the gen ed population. We know it should be, but teaching's complicated. And so I think a lot of what I was thinking about with you guys saying like, well, we need to be tracking data and you need to be meeting consistently. Those are all systems things, right? You need a strong visionary leader who's going to provide opportunities and support for that. There you go. It's not a video podcast, but Anna is motioning to her background. They give them a small plug. This is going to come out in March 2026, so it won't be evergreen. But Anna, maybe or one of you three finish out the podcast by talking about what's behind you.
In the end of July 2026, North Central ESD is hosting OSPI's MTSS Integrated Conference to be talking about MTSS. Like Stefan said, it's a systems perspective. So come learn about it.
Learn how to get in front of the lawsuit, not behind it.
Thanks for tuning into Spedsplaining. If you have questions or thoughts about today's episode, we would love to hear from you. Head over to our links in the show notes where you can drop your questions, join the conversations, and connect with us. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode if you found it helpful. Until next time, keep learning.